You're being hammered by torrential rains and near hurricane strength winds in Morehead City, North Carolina this morning as Hurricane Bonnie continues to cause havoc in the area. Morehead City has been under the gun since yesterday, and the going will remain rough there for some time to come. A live on-location report coming up in a few moments. Meanwhile, these pictures from Wilmington, North Carolina show the toll that Bonnie has taken on that region. Homes and businesses have been damaged by strong winds and flooding. Trees and power lines have been knocked down. Hundreds of people are in shelters. The good news is, though, that no injuries have been reported. Good morning, and thank you for joining us here at the Weather Channel Forecast Center. I'm Bruce Edwards as we continue our coverage of Hurricane Bonnie, which continues to meander in eastern North Carolina this morning. We look at the latest information from the National Hurricane Center, and Bonnie was centered at 35.1 north, 77 degrees west, or very near New Bern, North Carolina. The maximum sustained winds have come down somewhat to a minimal hurricane at 75 miles per hour as it's remained over land really for 18 hours or so. It is moving northeastward at 6 miles per hour. That direction is important. Central pressure at 975 millibars. Now, from Little River Inlet north to the Virginia border, still hurricane warnings are in effect, while hurricane watches extend from Chickateague, Virginia, up to Smith Point, Virginia. And then from Smith Point to Cape Henlopen, tropical storm warnings are in effect. And then as we continue north from Cape Henlopen to Sandy Hook, New Jersey, tropical storm watches are presently in effect. And then from Sandy Hook all the way up to Merrimack River, New Hampshire, where the surf is getting ugly. Heavy surf advisories in effect, and even south of our warned area from Murrells Inlet, South Carolina, still down to Jupiter Inlet, Florida. Heavy surf advisories are also being posted. And as usual with a landing hurricane along the coast, we have a potential for severe weather, and a tornado watch remains in effect for southern portions of Virginia and eastern parts of North Carolina. This has had an impact not only on North Carolina, but South Carolina as well, as tens of thousands of people or homes were without power. Thousands of folks are in shelters in South Carolina. Trees were down, roads blocked, and more than 125,000 people have been evacuated. However, earlier this morning, South Carolina Governor David Beasley lifted the evacuation order for those folks in Horry County, allowing them to return to their homes. Now, the government spokesman Gary Carr said that some sections of the Grand Strand may still be off limits until later this afternoon. He does note the Cherry Grove section of the beach was especially hard hit by the storm. Of course, that includes the Myrtle Beach area. Now, South Carolina impacted, and of course, North Carolina, where the hurricane made landfall at approximately 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon near Cape Fear, North Carolina. In North Carolina, we've seen widespread flooding, closing roads, trees are down, there's widespread power outages, hundreds of thousands of people without power, and also thousands of folks have been relegated to the shelters. But again, the positive news is few reports of any injuries. But the impact of Bonnie is still significant. Make no mistake about that. Usually these storms will come in and then continue to move fairly briskly, so an area that gets impacted will only be so for maybe 12 hours and then things improve. But not with Bonnie. And as further proof, we have 2 live reports from eastern North Carolina. Situated in Nags Head along the north coast is Jeff Morrow, and down a little farther south in Morehead City, North Carolina, Jim Cantori continues to be hammered like a rag doll. Jim, hang in there, buddy. How are things this hour?
We are hanging, Bruce, and I got to tell you, we have been now easily with tropical storm force winds for 24 hours. Our setup here, I'm facing to the south. These wonderful people have allowed us to come and use their home as a place to do our broadcast. We cannot even thank them enough. That's facing to the south. Then we have our live truck, and then our cameraman is actually inside our van shooting out at me. Now what I'm going to do is remove myself from the protection of the live truck in a little bit to show you how strong the winds are. But some good news is they have calmed down just a little bit. We are not seeing the hurricane force gusts anymore, but they're still very strong tropical storm force winds. And the pressure has also come up. We have a weather station here on our live truck, and we've also seen the barometer come up. Now, the problems continue here in Carteret County. 80% of the folks without power. It's going to be obviously quite some time. I mean, with these winds up this high and the rain, there's no way crews can get out and do the kind of repairs they need to do. So that's going to be a problem. Our storm cam shows the wind as it continues to batter the trees. Unfortunately, as we made our way here this morning, we noticed that these areas succumbed to some of the wind. We had power lines down, and some trees have snapped off as well. Probably not as bad as it could have been, that's for sure, if we had 115 miles an hour. So I'm going to step out here and show you some of the stronger winds. The good news is they've shifted around a little bit from the south and west. Now that's a pretty good gust right there. That's about 60. And that is, I'm going to come back in here. And that's definitely allowed, you know, especially this guy's home here, to not get as bad a beating as it has been. But still very strong winds, very dangerous conditions to be outside, folks. I'm in a protected area because the wind's coming off the water. But you may not be if you head out, because there's things and debris flying around with these winds, and they become dangerous objects. Let's find out how things are doing upstate. We're going to go to Nags Head, North Carolina, and get a live report from Jeff Morrow. Jeff?
Jim, things aren't as bad here, obviously, as they have been earlier with Bill Keneally yesterday and now with you last night and today. But again, Hurricane Bonnie is slowly moving in this area. Whether it remains a hurricane as it heads up this way remains to be seen, maybe even downgraded eventually, hopefully, to a tropical storm. But we're going to pan over and show you some of the high surf here coming in at an angle because it's coming up from the south. So it's kind of washing its way right up the beach. The side shore current must be unbelievable if anybody would be brave enough to go ahead out there. We're showing you the Jeanette Fishing Pier, and if you watch that long enough, you can see some of the highest waves actually kind of scraping the bottom of the deck there on that pier, which would mean it would be probably about a 15-foot wave coming in there, maybe even a bit higher. So things are kicking up here a little bit. We've had a little bit more in the way of rain, and the winds have picked up 35, maybe gusting to close to 40 miles an hour at times, definitely over tropical storm force. We'll keep you updated here from the Outer Banks here at Nags Head. Let's go back to you, Bruce.
Thanks very much. Jeff Moore reporting live from Nags Head, and Jim Cantori live from Morehead City, North Carolina. Right now, I'd like to introduce our hurricane specialist and expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Dr. Lyons, we've got the latest information from the National Hurricane Center, but not much change in Bonnie's strength or direction of movements.
Continues to creep to the east-northeast at about 6 miles per hour.
And of course, that track will be very, very important for residents farther up the coast as to exactly what track it takes and what impact it may have on the coast. One area that is, well, the North Carolina area is going to be impacted by tides. What is the significance with one of these storms now at the time of high tide?
Well, when you have the storm surge, it's basically added to whatever the tidal conditions are. So in the case of North Carolina, we basically have, this is the time of high tides that you're seeing here. And we have tidal ranges that the high tides are about anywhere from 2 to 5 feet above what a normal tide would be. So you would just add that on to any storm surge or water level rises associated with the breaking waves that you might get.
So just compounding a felony, so to speak.
That's right, just add them together.
The surge, the tide, and all that, and that will cause some beach erosion and some coastal flooding. Let's take a look at the our latest radar, if we can now. Oops, I just missed one. Let's try to back her up. There we go. We'll get it in just a second here. The latest Doppler radar, there it is, showing us there's still heavy bands of moisture swirling in off the ocean.
The center of the circulation is about right here. Very strong winds are down in here coming up this way. This part of the coastline is still getting pelted by very high surf, and I think when all is said and done, we're going to see a lot of beach erosion and wave damage along these beaches down here will be the primary damage. But we have seen some buoys out here measuring 50-mile-an-hour winds at the surface, and some of this surf is going to come all the way up into the coast of New Jersey and also New York the next 24 to 36 hours.
So before all said and done, we could see anywhere from 8 to 12 to 16, maybe 20 inches of rain in some spots along the eastern parts of the state.
Correct. We've seen a lot of rainfall already. We're going to have a rainfall update for you from the tipping bucket rain gauges, but we've already seen 8+ inches of rain from the Doppler radar. And you can see the track that the Hurricane Center is taking is pretty much this direction, but it's not impossible for it to go this way either. And if it goes, of course, on the more northern track, you will have more rain there. But there is a potential on the more eastern track for it to potentially redevelop a little bit before it weakens farther off to the northeast.
And of course, the result, depending upon that track, could be the worst case scenario with some heavy rain, rough surf. Of course, you're going to get some flooding rains and ongoing coastal problems if it hugs the coast. If it gets farther off, the impact perhaps not as dramatic.
That's right. Hugging the coast, heavy rains, and particularly the storm surge would be a problem.
So for residents of the northeast coast, keep your eye here on the Weather Channel. We'll keep an eye on the track of Bonnie and let you know exactly what's going on with its movement over the next 12, 24, 48 hours. Dr. Lyons, thanks very much, and thank you for joining us. We'll have continuous updates on Bonnie throughout the course of the day, but if you step away from the TV, get near the computer, looking at an aerial view of Wilmington, North Carolina. It graphically represents the beating given by Hurricane Bonnie. There's widespread flooding, downed trees, and major power outages as the hurricane crawls up the coast. Its heavy rainfall continues in Morehead City, North Carolina. Some of the heavy rain could end up in the northeastern United States before all is said and done. But the news this hour is that Bonnie is no longer a hurricane. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bruce Edwards. Thank you for joining us here at the Weather Channel Forecast Center. The National Hurricane Center has just downgraded Bonnie to a tropical storm, as the latest information has Bonnie's maximum sustained winds now down to about 65 miles an hour, still with higher gusts. There is the information that we have as of the 10 a.m. when Bonnie was still a hurricane, so it has been downgraded. We'll have that graphically shown for you in just a few moments as you look at still where we do have some of the warnings. Those, of course, will be amended also as the watches and warnings are revised. Tropical storm warning is now in effect from Little River Inlet, North Carolina to Cape Henlopen in Delaware, and that includes Pamlico, Albemarle Sound, and Chesapeake Bay southward from Smith Point. So we'll be advising or revising all these advisories as Bonnie is now a tropical storm. But we still have heavy surf advisories from Sandy Hook, New Jersey to Merrimack River, New Hampshire, and from Murrells Inlet, South Carolina to Jupiter Inlet, Florida, as still the surf is rather angry indeed. Tornado watch remains in effect until 5 o'clock Eastern time for eastern North Carolina and extreme southeastern Virginia as this system continues to have an impact on the eastern part of the region and potentially could produce a severe storm or two. In North and in South Carolina, the impact has been wide-ranging as we've had some heavy rains, power outages, and of course some localized flooding. The Weather Channel has crews on site to give us live reports of what's going on in Nags Head, North Carolina. The Weather Channel's Jeff Morrow is stationed there. Conditions continue to worsen, while a little farther south down the coast, conditions continue to be blustery and transmission a little difficult in Morehead City with Jim Cantori. Jim, good morning, and hope you can keep your picture long enough. Things are getting a little angry there.
Yeah, Bruce, in all honesty, this is probably the first time that we've seen the sustained winds drop below tropical storm force. But, you know, you get that gust every once in a while that moves the satellite dish around. And unfortunately, that does allow us to lose our signal. But the rain has calmed down a little bit. We've seen the ceiling lift. All signs that things are beginning to slowly wind down. Also, our barometer here on the Weather Channel Storm Tracker truck has come up a little bit. So we're about 988 millibars now. So it's very, very good to see those pressure rises. That is for sure. But the rain still continues to come down, although it is not as heavy. Some good news. I was just talking to the Skyble family who live inside the house here, which is where we're at doing our live shots, and they mentioned about an hour or so ago that the lights started flickering on. So apparently there are crews out trying to repair some of this power service. 80% of Carteret County is without power at this time. Well, as far as the damage is concerned, you know, we have a few shingles and whatnot, and there's some screens that have come off people's homes. But all in all, this beautiful subdivision has actually fared very, very well. Our storm cam shot showing you the trees swing a little bit more gently in the wind, not as harsh as what we saw at 7 and 8 o'clock this morning, and then again last night before the sun went down. And I hope you got to see some of those shots with our night vision as well, as we could still see after dark. Now, what we're going to try and do, folks, here is now that the winds have died a little bit, right now we have the ability to broadcast out of our truck because we're protected. That's why our cameraman Blair is sitting in the truck shooting out at me in the ugly weather. But we're going to try and get around and show you the sound, because you ought to see some of the wave action coming in with the south wind off the sound. It's very, very aggressive, and so now this part of the sound is starting to take a little bit of a beating. Other than that, we're just waiting for things to wind down, just like everybody else. Let's go north and find out how things are shaping up in Nags Head. Jeff Morrow's been there for the duration. We're going to get a live report from him. Jeff?
All right, Jim, and actually up until this morning, it was so far so good. We thought we had dodged the bullet there with Bonnie. Unfortunately, now Bonnie a tropical storm, so whatever happens up here on the Outer Banks will not be as bad, it looks like, as what happened when it was a hurricane as it came on shore in southeast North Carolina. Still, hurricane or tropical storm, the waves are just as high right now, at least about 8 to 12 feet high. I mean, we're talking some real high surf. We're showing you out toward the end of the Jeanette Fishing Pier here in Nags Head. I was watching some of the waves come in there, and the spray as it comes off the top of them definitely kind of washes over the bottom of the deck there, and that's got to be about 15 feet high. So some tremendous surf which continues to pound. Looks like high tide's coming up here in about an hour or less. So hopefully whatever overwash we're getting, particularly down on Hatteras and Ocracoke Islands, will start to subside here as we get below high tide this afternoon. We'll keep you updated on what is now Tropical Storm Bonnie. Let's go back to Bruce in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Tropical Storm Bonnie, and thank you for that live report from Nags Head. Jim Cantori, Morehead City, North Carolina. I'd like to bring in now our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And so a slow-moving storm, but now we're downgrading it gradually, now down to a tropical storm.
That's right. The thing people may want to keep in mind, though, is that with a hurricane landfall, usually the hurricane weakens very quickly. But once you reach tropical storm force, the winds weaken much slower after this.
Oh, I see. Okay, so and it's just been a slow-moving storm too, so the persistent rains will be there. But as Jeff mentioned, he's figured he's about an hour away from high tide, which will have an impact. And here's a look at the impact or the tidal information. We'll have that for you in just a moment to show you exactly what the time of high tide is. And again, that just is possibly going to compound the situation. Explain how the high tide affects the region there, coupled with the storm.
Well, what you basically do is you take whatever the tidal rise is associated with the tide and add it to the storm surge, and that's the actual height of the water level in addition to the wave heights. And I think just looking at some of this photo footage that we've seen, I think the wind damage inland is not going to be too bad, although if somebody's got a house damage, they're going to be saying you're wrong, Steve. But I think along the coastal zone down in here where all those very high waves and the storm surge hit, you're going to see significant damage right at the beach. And there's still strong winds out in this area, so don't venture out here. There's some very dangerous surf there. And up where Jim is up here, or Jeff is up here, there's some very strong longshore currents as well.
Well, rainfall has been locally heavy. We've had some official rainfall totals right now, and as you can see, the latest report, Jacksonville, North Carolina, officially almost 10.5 inches of rainfall, and they range down to Fayetteville, North Carolina with 2.4, but that's fairly well inland. Our latest visible satellite picture comes into focus, and we can still see the storm with, it's still a pretty large storm, and it's got a lot of rainfall potential here.
Yeah, the circulation is very large. I can hardly touch the bottom of the screen to encompass the southern half of it. The good thing, I was looking at the radar rain rates. We can calculate how much rain falls per hour, and it looks like the last few hours has been between about 1/4 of an inch per hour and 1/3 of an inch per hour. And even if the storm persists over this area for 24 hours, most of the amounts will only amount to 6 to 8 inches. Locally, it could be much higher than that. But typically in a hurricane, the rain rates are on the order of 1 to 3 inches. So we're in very good shape rain-wise, considering this is a very slow-moving system.
That's right.
But still, the potential for flooding is very, very large.
And the impact it may have or may not have on the northeastern seaboard depends all upon the track it takes.
That's right. And right now we're in a northeastward direction that's moving toward the northeast. And if it moves close to the coast, we're going to have more surge action and, of course, a much better chance for heavy precipitation along the east coast. It moves out to sea, we will have less impact from it directly. But high surf is still going to move up toward the Jersey coast in New York, and there's some strong longshore currents. They will experience some beach erosion there as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Steve Lyons, and thank you for joining us. We'll have continuous updates on Tropical Storm Bonnie throughout the course of the day. Now let's check back and see what's going on elsewhere across the country. Back to the studio.
Okay, once again, we'll check on what's happening as we look at a chance for more showers and thunderstorms. Some of these will become severe this afternoon across Minnesota, Iowa, and also Missouri. Kansas City, you've seen some heavier showers and storms already this morning. Northeast is looking good for now, but again, you can see that Tropical Storm Bonnie continue to churn up the coastline, and we'll keep our eyes on that for sure through this afternoon. Here's a look at the radar at the present time, and you can also see some stronger storms approaching Minneapolis, St. Paul to Redwood Falls, Minnesota. The rest of the country doesn't look all that bad. We could be looking at some more strong storms across eastern North Carolina. Now basically, once again, we'll be watching for Tropical Storm Bonnie continue to work its way very slowly northward for the upcoming afternoon.
Telecommunications for the Weather Channel live reports are provided in part by Bell South.
And stick around, more to come, including a look at traveling conditions. That's all coming up next following your local forecast. This tropical update this go around will feature Tropical Storm Bonnie, downgraded from a hurricane status at 11 o'clock this morning, and the coordinates at that time were 35.2 degrees north, 76.8 degrees west, or about 80 miles to the southwest of Elizabeth City in North Carolina. Top sustained winds down below hurricane status, so it's now a tropical storm. They were at 65 miles per hour, gusting better than that at times, however. Still crawling along northeasterly bound at 6 miles per hour. And the pressure's on the rise, which means we do have a weakening tropical storm at 978 millibars. Let's show you the latest warnings out right now. And once again, we do have tropical storm warnings, which are out. Forget about the hurricane advisories right now. They are gone. We will show you this, which is, once again, a tornado watch in effect until 5 o'clock this afternoon, Eastern Daylight Time. Covers still a large part of northeastern North Carolina and also much of southeastern Virginia, including around Norfolk, Virginia, where you could be looking at some nasty weather almost certainly now as Tropical Storm Bonnie begins to churn its way northward very, very slowly. Let's show you what it looks like on the radar picture at the present time. The center of circulation not entirely over land at the present time, which means this is going to be a slow process to really weaken. It will not weaken very rapidly, that is for sure. So many places which have seen more than 10 inches of rainfall could see another 5 to 10 inches of rainfall, especially in east central and northeastern sections of North Carolina until later on this evening and by early morning tomorrow. And some of that heavy rainfall begins to shift down northbound towards Elizabeth City in North Carolina and Norfolk, Virginia come later on this afternoon. This is what happened so far up until 8 o'clock this morning. Take a look at some of the deeper reds in here, which indicates anywhere between 6 and about 10 inches of rainfall. Since that time, even more has fallen, and because of the slow nature of this storm beginning to move its way northward, we're going to be looking at torrential amounts of rainfall still in the offing. Additionally, could be looking at another 8 inches or better than that through later this afternoon. Well, there's something else we have to worry about as well. That's going to be Hurricane Danielle. The 11 o'clock advisory Eastern Daylight Time, 21.4 degrees north, 59.3 degrees west, or about 300 miles to the northeast of the northern Leeward Islands. Top sustained winds with Danielle back up to 90 miles per hour. It was moving west-northwesterly at 18 miles per hour, so still cruising along at a pretty healthy speed, and the pressure again was holding at 997 millibars. Now, long-range computer projections do indicate that we're going to be looking at a trough developing over the eastern part of the country during the next 2 or 3 days, with a ridge developing over the west, which could mean some good news.